Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Los Banos Talk. My name is Justin Collins. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the Los Banos Unified School District, particularly the school board, and even more particularly, the school board president, Ray Martinez. Some of you may or may not be aware or have caught on to the fact that there's a lot of controversy surrounding the school board. You may also be aware that a lot of things seem to be in disarray. Sometimes things seem to be happening slowly or not getting done. There's a lot of confusion. I've gone back and watched several meetings for you and prepared some clips, and I'll show you some of the things that I think you ought to see. We'll talk about some of these controversies, and I'll show you why I believe a lot of that has to do with the current school board president. And we'll get into all of that in just a moment, right after a brief message from our sponsor.
And you don't even know you are the stranger in the corner on the second floor. You're the girl next door, the girl next door. The stranger in the corner on the second floor. You're the girl next door. I know you're miles away from me, but still I dream of you and say your name in my sleep. Tell me, isn't that crazy? Just wanna call you up and tell you how I feel. I see you wherever I go, and you don't even know. You are the stranger in the corner on the second floor. You're the girl next door, the girl next door. The stranger in the corner on the second floor. You're the girl next door. You're the girl next door, yeah. Girl next door, yeah. You're the girl next.
And we're back. Thanks for watching. So Ray Martinez was narrowly elected to become the school board president. And in case you're not aware of how this works, there's 7 members on the school board. That body gets to vote and decide on who the president of that board would be. Kind of like similar to mayor within our city council system. It's a member who votes like any other member, but they have some extra powers when it comes to agenda and setting the pace and procedural things. They're kind of like the guiding rudder or the leadership of the board during the meetings. Now, if you go back and you look through our school board meetings as of late, since he's become president, there's been a lack of order, a lack of things getting done, and to make things worse, a lot of blunder, error, and silly mistakes made. Despite serving on the board for quite some time, he still doesn't seem to understand the procedural process or the function and role of his job. In fact, throughout the meetings, you can see him blundering and stumbling through as other members on the board correct him and try to guide him through what he should say. To give you a really recent example, to be fair, here's a clip from last meeting that occurred on February 11th. So there in the top left corner is the president who I'm speaking of, Ray Martinez. And in a moment, you'll get to see some of the stumbling blocks that I'm talking about.
Does anybody have any question on the changes here again? We're going to put item G after item I. We will present item I first. Does anybody have?
It's not item I first. You're going to do H and then I. And then G. First H, then I, then G.
Okay, that'll be the order then. Okay, the substitute motion is stated that we will address item H, then I, and then item G. Is there any question on that from anybody?
No, not at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna need a motion then.
Go ahead and make that motion for the change. I made the motion.
Okay. But we still need to.
A second. You need a second.
we need a motion. We need a second. So on this change, on the substitute motion.
Second, Jessica Moran.
Okay. Who made the motion?
Rita.
Pereira. Okay, and who seconded it?
Jessica.
Jessica, okay. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, substitute motion regarding the approval of the agenda. And we've got a motion by trustee Pereira and a second by Moran. And roll call vote on that. Tina?
Ms. Benton,
Yes.
Ms. Moran,
Yes.
Mr. Munoz,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the substitute motion passes. Let's move on to item 5. Public hearing.
Sorry, Ray, but you have to now vote on the main motion, which is the substitute motion becomes the main motion.
Yes, in our vote that we just voted on, the substitute motion does become the main motion. And we just took a vote on it.
No, you haven't. You voted on the substitute motion. You did not vote on the substitute motion becoming the main.
Becoming the main motion, okay. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let's back up here to, again, the substitute motion has passed. And so it now becomes the basic motion or the main motion. And I need again, a motion and a second to approve that.
You have the motion and the second is already done. So what you need to do is open up discussion on the main motion, and then you can take a vote.
Okay, let's go ahead. Does anybody have any comments or discussion on this motion? Anybody? Okay. All right, then I need a motion to.
We have the motion from,
make the
can I ask a question? Is this a motion, it's Marlene and Mark, correct? The original motion was what we're voting on. Is that correct?
No, you're voting on the substitute motion, which now becomes the main motion. It's all parliamentary procedure. It's really strange how it works, but the
I just want to
substitute.
make sure my notes are going to be all over the place. So just saying.
No,
Roll
Okay.
call.
so it's Pereira Moran.
Yeah. And so what we're voting on now is that substitute motion has become the main motion. And we need to approve it. And so I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve that.
I'll make a motion.
Second that, Ray.
All right. So we have the main motion.
Now, that may have seemed a little painful to watch, but the reality is that lately that's what most of the meetings have looked like. As you can tell, the guy clearly doesn't understand how the procedures work and is essentially being coached by other members of the board on how to move through, despite serving on the board for 1, a long time, and 2, being the president of the board. As you saw, it created a lot of confusion at the meeting. People were then really confused as to what they were actually doing, and if things had been submitted on the agenda properly in the first place, if he understood procedure in the first place, and if he had introduced it and followed the steps as he should, a lot of that confusion would be avoided. Now, you might say I'm being nitpicky and these are little things, but not really, because these little things add up. They create confusion and they bog down the system, and they create an environment in where important decisions such as opening and closing schools, etc., which are already difficult to make, become even more difficult, confusing, or not done properly. Now, the other thing about Mr. Martinez that's interesting is that he makes a lot of comments in the public, and by that I mean on social media, primarily Facebook, in which he often says something that's offensive, controversial, or goes against the district's mission statement. Often individuals come forward at the public meeting and submit a public comment along the lines of criticizing him for something that he said, to which he listens to and then ignores, and continues the same behavior over and over. And as someone else has mentioned, as an elected official, there really is no process other than someone being voted out of office to actually be held accountable. So let's take a look at one of these controversial statements. So this was a public comment that was submitted in January, and it was regarding one of his posts. But honestly, this isn't even his worst post. There's far more posts than this and other things he said that are far more shocking. But this post received the following response. Board President Ray Martinez and board members. We are only a few weeks into the new year, yet I'm ashamed of the actions of multiple board members and concerned about the future of our district. Since the transition to new leadership, there has been a lack of organization to meetings, disregard for established rules, or complete ignorance of procedures. I hope to see that leadership gets up to speed quickly. I was dismayed to see a public comment on social media by President Martinez in which he spoke against one specific political party and suggested that public educators are indoctrinating our children. This is a screenshot of said post, which has since been deleted. Absolutely, one of the strongest unions in the US, Teachers Union, supports and endorses the Democrats. What type of educators will they be to our children? Indoctrinators. As a reminder, I have included a quote from the board's vision statement, which states that leaders will cross political boundaries to work in a partnership. I hope Mr. Martinez and all members can remember this as they serve in their public role to represent all the Los Banos community. But that's not all. There's more. There's a lot of homophobic, transphobic, conspiracy theory stuff, very hyper political national level politic type stuff that seems to affect his decision making process at the local level. And many of his statements often put him at odds with the teachers and would be very offensive to many of the parents and students that he represents. But I don't want to put words into his mouth, so I'm going to show you his statements and some of these posts that I'm talking about. So we're here on his Facebook, and this is just from the 21st. This was not very long ago. And he's shared this post, which is basically saying that he believes that schools, businesses, etc., should all be open before the U.S. borders open. Now, there's two things interesting about this post here. One, it's xenophobic. It's essentially anti-immigration, specifically anti-immigration along the southern border. Many of our residents in this town, many of the students that attend our schools might be from south of the border themselves or their parents. So what kind of message does this send to them when our school board president essentially says something about them or their family and how they got here? Additionally kind of disturbing is the actual wording of his post. Let us listen to God, not man. God represents fearless freedom. Man is full of fear. Fear-induced legislation, policies, and orders cannot compare the protection of our immune system with an ineffective mask that covers it up and hinders its function. So here he is essentially saying that you shouldn't wear a mask. And on top of that, by wearing a mask, you're actually making yourself worse off than if you didn't wear a mask. But he's supposed to be in charge of the board that's supposed to cause our school to safely reopen. If you recall, I just did an article where I basically showed you that schools are going to start reopening in mid-March, starting with elementary and working its way up to high school by mid-April. And the school board assured us that they're taking every precaution and taking it seriously. But that really flies in stark contrast when the president of said board is basically saying that masks don't work. In fact, not only do they not work, but they make things worse. Another thing that you'll notice, a common trend, is that he makes so many statements that are controversial and offensive that he often has to delete them. And so going through his Facebook, you'll find plenty of deleted things. Sometimes I'm able to get a screenshot of it, but not always. There's a few I'm going to show you that I'm not sure if they're still on here or not, but I've taken a screenshot. Here's another example of some of the anti-mask propaganda. This is just from this month. And then here's some anti-vaccine propaganda. Here's another post making fun of essentially a disability. ADD is a real disability, and comments like this make it hard for people to actually get help and the medication that they truly need. And it doesn't make sense for the school district president to be shaming parents and students for seeking the medical care that they need in order to achieve academically. As you could tell, he posts a lot. I mean, a lot. Numerous times a day. About probably 35% of his posts are truly cringeworthy and offensive. The other 65%, more or less, are fine. If you also notice, many of the posts have been deleted. Many. And so there's a lot that unfortunately I can't show you anymore. Here is one of such posts that I managed to keep because I got a screenshot of it, because I just want to show you that I'm not making this up. So technically, there's no indication whether this man is truly gay or not gay, but it really doesn't matter. Essentially, all this person is doing in this photograph is being very feminine, right? As to what we would call feminine. But what he's essentially doing is he's saying that children or adults that are like this are basically spawn of Satan. He's essentially saying they're horrible human beings, etc. Now, I would almost guarantee that at least one of our students that attends our school is likely homosexual, bisexual, something. I doubt every single member of our student body is a cisgendered, heterosexual individual. Out of the thousands of students, surely there's at least one, and I'd say more than just one. But the school board is supposed to represent all the students, not just some of them, not just the straight ones. Now, Mr. Martinez has very strong personal beliefs, and that's absolutely fine, but he's an elected official, elected by us, and he represents us. And so if our beliefs don't really align, well, that's an issue. But the thing is though, not everything is moving slowly. Some things are going fairly smoothly, or going right along. There's a very controversial Firehouse contract that was just approved. Mr. Martinez is one of the pastors at that church, the Star of David Church, and the individual who owns the company that we basically hired is one of his best friends and also a pastor at that church. When questioned about this, and I'll show you the clip, he lied about it. When people asked him whether he was close to this individual, to Dr. Sonny Lee, he said that he knows a lot of people a long time, as opposed to answering the question, yes, he's known him a long time. And he doesn't just know him, they're practically best friends. All over his Facebook page, you can see that they share each other's stuff back and forth. And they've even got degrees from the same school, which I'm going to show you very soon, is a non-accredited Christian university based out of Uganda, kind of based out of Tennessee, that gives away degrees for sale. And that you don't actually have to attend any class to get an honorary master's or doctorate from this school. In fact, they advertise it that way and specifically solicit this. Now I'm going to roll into the clip that I've prepared for you in regards to the Firehouse deal.
Okay, and this is for Ray. I have been asked by many people about your connection to Firehouse and the perceived conflict of interest. And one of the things that I received, the founder of Firehouse is the founder of the Star of David Church. Ray is the head pastor of that church in Los Banos. Another one contacted me and wrote the Star of David Church and the pastor that runs it, and Ray is the senior advisor on that panel. Is that a conflict? And then tonight in the comments that were submitted in the public comment part of the meeting that's posted on the website, the comment from the Los Banos Teachers Association, or Jennifer Wilkin, it says, I have found no testimonies or evidence that this program is effective. What I have found are connections between our school board president and the founder of the program. In fact, Mr. Martinez is a pastor at Dr. Lara's church. This leads me to question whether or not this program is indeed the best for our students or the best for Mr. Martinez. Since it was you who suggested the district pursue bringing the Firehouse program to the district, it does give the impression that there is a conflict of interest. Can you talk about these concerns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, first of all, the research that was done is not correct. Anita will vouch for me. I am not a ordained pastor for Star David Church. So again, that information is not right. And it looks like somebody's just, got agenda here trying to connect me and make this connection. And it's not true. Is that correct, Anita?
It is, yes, it is correct.
So you have no connection with Mr. Laura?
No, I'm part of the church, but I am not an ordained pastor.
Okay,
Leader out there.
but you have known him for years, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
What's that?
you have known him for years.
Yeah, I've known a lot of people for years. In and out of the church.
These,
Okay, so you don't perceive there's a conflict. I mean, I've heard this from a number of people, not just, I just gave a couple examples here, but I've heard this, they feel that there's a conflict here, and you don't think there is.
No, I don't see a conflict because we keep everything separate.
Okay.
Firehouse has nothing to do with the church.
Okay, so this is costing us $12,000 a month. That's a lot of money. What are we getting for $12,000 a month?
okay, well, one, we've hired. Yeah, $12,000 a month at $22 an hour per hiree. That's really not a lot of money.
Well, I heard that you were only hiring, what we were told is that you're hiring 3 staff and 2 support staff.
Yeah,
5 people.
there's 5 total. So I don't know, but $22 an hour is not a lot of money. I mean, yes, that's what we want to make sure that our representatives on the team are paid well, that they can afford to take care of their families.
Dr. Marshall, is this costing the district anything? I mean, this is outside funding.
No, it's not. Congrats.
To answer the question, it's the money is from 100% comes from the California Department of Education, Learning and Community Safe, part of the Safe Schools grant. It's a grant money.
Yes. And
Well, Anita, so I just did a quick figure here on my calculator. $22 an hour for 5 people. And each one is working according to the contract, is that they're working 30 hours a week. That's only $3,300. So where does the other?
Well, you're.
Not
It's a-
$9,000 go?
I did submit the budget to the school district. It was approved. We have incentives. We take them out on field trips. I mean, it's all broken down. Employee taxes, not employee taxes, but employer paid taxes. Everything is itemized. And I'm sure that if you would like, they can show you the budget.
it was Trustee Pereira, that was, those things were specified in the contract.
No, they weren't.
Services provided, yes, and.
No, they weren't.
Read them ahead of time, yes.
No, they actually, they didn't delineate what the $12,000 was going to be spent on. It just sounds like, like if we're giving them almost $3,500 a month for staff salaries, and of course there are other things on top of that with the Social Security and Medicare. I understand all the other parts that go on top of that, but I mean that's still $12,000 a month. I mean that's a whole lot of field trips.
Not all.
I just think that's a lot of money for 5 staff people. So that's just a concern.
This grant, and they have vetted this program, right? I mean, they wouldn't have vetted, if they didn't approve the grant, they would have disapproved the vetting, but they vetted you. And you have been in operation for many years. You've been very successful in what you folks do. And to me, it's, if you can change one life and turn one life around, who are we to put a price on it, especially when we're not even paying one penny for it. So with that, I'm gonna go.
I have some questions, Ray.
And I'm not done with my questions. I still have some
Well, I'm
questions.
gonna go ahead and end the discussions now, and I'm gonna call for a vote. I am
But I
calling,
have
So
questions.
we have questions that we would like answered before we vote.
yeah, well, I think that, we've.
It's not
had a
what,
time
I'm
to
sorry,
ask
but I have questions that I need answered.
And,
And I have questions.
all right, I'm gonna allow 5 more minutes for the questions.
I'm sorry, you can't give us a time limit. We didn't vote on a time limit. That's not in the rules. So I'm sorry, you can't do that. We have questions and we have the right to ask them before we make a decision.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Anita. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the Firehouse Community Development Contract.
I'll go ahead and make that motion, Ray.
We have a motion by trustee Munoz. Looking for a second.
Oh, wow.
Looking for a second.
I'll go ahead and second, Jessica.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
Trustee Moran. Okay, we've got a motion by trustee Munoz and a second by trustee Moran. Our roll call vote, Tina?
Ms. Benton,
Yes.
Ms. Moran,
Yes.
Mr. Munoz,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
It's a yes, looking forward to the review in June to make sure that we're solid with this program before we sign on to another year. So it's yes.
Ms.
Thank you.
Rodriguez, Ms. Smith,
You know what? I like Anita and I like her presentation. I still want to meet Sonny Lara. He's going to have to make his way to Los Banos to meet this board. I am going to vote yes because I think they're more of a mentor group than anything. And I'm thinking there are a lot of kids that need a mentor. And I think from what I'm hearing from her, they're more a mentor than anything. So I'm going to say yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this vote passes with the majority. It's been approved. Congratulations, Firehouse, and we look forward to a successful and life-changing program.
Now, as you can see, ultimately, it basically passed pretty much unanimously. However, though, come June, there's an opportunity to review it before they actually proceed to renew it for a year. So it's not completely done in many aspects, but yes, ultimately it was agreed to. Now, as far as this person, Sonny, or Dr. Laura, that's where things really get interesting. I did some digging on this individual, and this is basically what I found. Now, what you're seeing here is we're on Dr. Sonny Laura's, we're on his Facebook page, his personal Facebook profile. And as you can see, he has the mutual friend, Ray Cedillo Martinez. And they're both members at the same church, and they both preach at the same church, and they go way back. Now, here's what's interesting. Look at the date, right? January 12th. At the same time as the meeting, as the Zoom meeting that we just watched, where people complained about Sonny not being able to come, something about his mom passing away or something like that, I don't know. He was actually live doing a video, doing a Facebook video. So he totally could have gone to that meeting, but instead he chose to do something totally different. And that's a really slap in the face to the board. It's like he doesn't even feel he needs to show up, like he's got this in the bag. And he probably does feel like he has it in the bag because one of his closest friends is the president of the board. Now, it's interesting as we go through here, we see, so he's calling himself executive director. You see different titles, founder. Essentially, he's the owner of the business. And that's the other thing. It is a business. While granted, it may appear at times as a nonprofit. It most certainly is not. And a few things that I found when looking at this guy's stuff really kind of stood out to me that I want to bring to your attention. So here we are on the website, right, for Firehouse Community Development Center. And there's a couple things that are interesting about it. So Dr. Sonny, right, he received his doctorate from this school called Kiowa International University, right? And so we look at it further and we see that he got his doctor from the College of Christian Education Department, doctorate of philosophy and humanities, and this is an honorary degree. If you're not familiar, honorary degrees don't really have requirements. If the school wants to give someone one, they can. Oprah Winfrey has one, Obama has one, a lot of people. And there's actually an online scam where you can basically just pay for one. But besides this honorary doctorate, I don't actually see any kind of other education or special certifications, etc. Well, I did some digging. And this university has actually been under a lot of scrutiny. It's actually, interestingly enough, it's illegal. And one of the reasons it's illegal is because it's not accredited in the country it's from, which is Uganda. So it's in Uganda and it's not actually accredited. Its accreditation actually comes from a US institution, which is this one right here, this Tennessee one. I looked into this one and that gets interesting as well. So here's another article where it talks about that particular university being illegal. And what's fascinating is that what's happened is essentially this. They're being accused of giving out doctorate degrees, honorary doctorate degrees for money. So for instance, they don't show the composition of staff or founding members, right? They have the seminary, this United States Graduate College and Seminary in Tennessee. And according to its website, you can get a PhD, right? You can get your honorary doctorate by paying $2,295 and writing a 60-page dissertation. It's not going to be published, etc. And so essentially what this is this is a school that essentially makes money by selling honorary degrees. And there's a lot of people with these various degrees. For instance, this group of people here got various honorary degrees in a variety of things like media management and a host of other things, some masters, some doctorate. Fascinatingly enough, this degree is the same place that Ray Martinez has received his degree from as well. And that gets also interesting. But needless to say, what's my point? Sonny's not a doctor. He has a bought and paid for piece of paper that is a legal honorary PhD. But everyone listening and watching this episode right now, if they had $2,000 and an hour or two of time, could also have the same PhD. So in the sense of saying, is this man extremely qualified? Has he gone to school? And the answer is no, he hasn't gone to any formal schooling or education. He's not really a doctor, and it's inappropriate to continue referencing him as a doctor. So that's very dishonest, which makes me question other things about his practice and his business. One of the things I also don't like about his business is the fact that his business kind of seems to pretend as if it's like a nonprofit, but it's not. It is a for-profit company. And so it has a board, so to speak, right? Which you would have a board if you were if you were a nonprofit or a large corporation, you would need one. He doesn't really need one, but yet he's got this to kind of make it look more like he's nonprofit. Another thing that's weird is when we go to the audit statements, they haven't done one since 2017. So they don't have any sense. And then last but not least, they have this section, make a difference, and numerous other places on the sites where you can donate money. But here's the thing, it's not really a nonprofit. And what was even worse was before, and he's taken it down since, but before on the Facebook page, even had, the PayPal account there so you can make donations, etc. And to make a long story short, why does a for-profit company need to solicit donations? And I think people are under this idea that this is some nonprofit, but really it's not. And if we go look at at Sonny and his lifestyle here, what we see is that he lives a pretty good lifestyle. He's got a nice house. He's got some pretty nice clothes, jewelry, etc. He dresses very ostentatiously. He's got some pretty nice decor going on. And look, there's nothing wrong with having some money, but this money comes from his for-profit business that's kind of masquerading like a nonprofit, and it's just not. So while I understand that the money is technically not coming from the district, it is coming from a grant. That's true. It still sends us a message. Hey, there are people in our school board who are willing to use their position of authority to enrich themselves and their friends. And it doesn't matter if the money's not coming from us, it's coming from the state. It's still coming from taxpayers. And if they're willing to steal from there, then what else are they willing to steal from? But essentially, the message is clear. There's a lot of fraudulent things about this organization. And there's a lot of fraudulent things about the founder of said organization. And then there were bold-faced lies. As you just saw in the meeting, when they asked Ray Martinez, are you, a head preacher at the church? And he answered the question by saying, no, he's not an ordained preacher, as in he's not an ordained minister. That's true, but see, that's dodging the question, because the answer is yes, Mr. Martinez, you do preach at that church and have for some time, and you're a big time member of said church, which so is Sonny. The other question, have you known him for a long time? And the answer is yes, he's known him for a long time, but instead he says, I know lots of people. I've known a lot of people for a long time. Completely dodging the question and not being honest. Not only do they know each other well, they're really close friends. They're practically best friends. They're super, super close. And Ray is the one who brought this to the table. But when anyone questions it, other people give them such a hard time. And as you could see by watching the meeting, there's kind of this weird partisan split between the different members on the board. And they're kind of in two different little camps and support each other's agenda, so to speak. Now, whatever you think about this deal is up to you. You can like it, love it, hate it. I don't care. But you deserve to know about it and you deserve to understand. And you also deserve to know that things just aren't adding up here. And that even with all this evidence, even with all this coming up in the meeting, we still go forward. And so that's why it's really important for us to pay attention and hold our elected officials accountable. So, folks, as you can see, so we have gross incompetency, questionable values and conduct, and then finally, using of your personal office for personal gain. So there you have it, folks. The guy in charge of the board and supposed to be leading our district into bringing our kids back to school in person safely, barely, if at all, even believes in coronavirus, doesn't believe in masks, doesn't believe in vaccines, is more concerned about how the boys and girls dress when they come to school and whether that complies with gender norms than he is about their safety or COVID. He constantly picks fights with teachers, and the teachers union vilifies them and makes them seem like political enemies. When it comes to actually running the meeting, he's incompetent. He's incapable of doing so, and he's incapable of bringing the leadership that the board needs at this very crucial moment in time. And the few things he does manage to accomplish are for his personal gain. Once again, if you haven't already, please like, follow, subscribe to Los Banos Talk. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and of course, losbanostalk.com. You can subscribe to the free newsletter at losbanostalk.com and get free articles sent directly to your email. You can become a supporter of Los Banos Talk for just $4.99 a month via the Facebook page, Los Banos Talk. Just click the button that says Become a Supporter. You'll gain access to exclusive behind-the-scene footage and access to all the episodes without a commercial and before everyone else. Plus, for every 25 new supporters, you'll be entered in a chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. Once again, my name is Justin Collins, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.